So what is the approach? Amazing. I'm sort of warm. My mind is completely fractured. It's like football. Or is that one? No. So we're showing how low people are. Is it Soapbox Presenters? Yeah. And then the next one. You know, we just want to intimidate people a little bit more.
Stay open to this meeting.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Your first first. Yeah, like 39 still nice. Oh, sorry, you have to know. Yeah, but you can start to come.
Yeah, a little bit late, so yeah.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is our Soapbox Session, which is now becoming quite a tradition of Liverpool to have the Soapbox Session at our conferences, thanks to Patrick and Ben's innovation on this. And Patrick is now suffering the consequences because he has to start. The Soapbox works in the following way. Each speaker has 5 minutes to speak, 5 minutes and 10 seconds by the looks of things to speak, and if they go over that time, they get a tennis ball on the head. So they ought to stop on time. My name is Farrell, by the way. I'm a lecturer here at the University of Liverpool in International Law and Human Rights Law. It's my job to moderate this and to throw tennis balls, and also to have my own little soapbox about the gender dimensions of this soapbox session. Where are the women, Patrick, Ben? I agree. I'm kidding a little. It's becoming quite a thing. Academics are now being known to walk out of panels if there isn't a woman on them, and so on. Just so you know. So you're free to walk out if you like. I guess they'll call me the token woman for this one. Okay, good. I think we'll get started. Patrick Butchard is going to lead the way. Patrick is a doctoral student at the University of Liverpool, and he is going to rant about the responsibility to protect. So let's go.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Okay, so responsibility to revolt. This idea is based on the responsibility to protect. This was a political undertaking unanimously adopted by the international community in 2005. They agreed that each state had the responsibility to protect their populations from genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and ethnic cleansing. They also agreed that states had a responsibility to help each other with this, or where there was a manifest failure on the part of the state, to intervene if necessary. The main body that would step in to do this is the United Nations Security Council. This is because the UN Security Council has the legal powers to intervene. It can use force, adopt sanctions, or even create peacekeeping missions if depending on what the situation requires. But of course, there are problems with the Security Council, as we've seen, like the situation in Syria. Because each member of the Permanent Five has a veto, they can block action where they might have national interests involved, causing council paralysis. There may be a lack of political will to take certain measures, especially in light of recent unpopular interventions. But the point is, any inaction on the part of the Security Council, for whatever reason, results in a failure to protect populations at the risk of mass atrocities. But does the responsibility to protect end there, or are such responsibilities residual even after a failure? If the Security Council, for whatever reason, does not act, does the responsibility continue? Let's look at it this way. Responsibility might traditionally be viewed as a pyramid. At the bottom, we have the people, who have in some way passed responsibility onto their local and their national governments to conduct public duties, one of these being the responsibility to protect. This responsibility, as the international community agreed, is also to protect populations of other states, not just their own. So for this purpose, they might have established regional organizations to assume some of these duties. There is then the international community as a whole who might utilize whatever diplomatic and political leverage as a collective to protect the population. Beyond that, states have also vested powers in the UN. Okay, but does the responsibility really end there, especially with the body with the powers to act fails to do so? Is the ultimate responsibility to protect stuck at the top of this weird pyramid? I argue that there isn't really a pyramid at all. Responsibility is something, it's not something that just moves in one direction, but instead continues to flow at different stages of a crisis, requiring different actors at different levels to act simultaneously. So back at the UN, the responsibility continues. After all, there are other organs in the UN, other than the Security Council, that might be able to take legal and effective action. In response to a double manifest failure because of Security Council inaction, could the General Assembly step in to fulfill the responsibilities when the Security Council does not? But then, without going into specifics, this could require 2/3 of member states to vote for the resolution, which might be impossible. But even so, the responsibility continues to engage the international community. But again, what if they continue to fail? It continues to engage regional organizations, but again, what if they continue to fail? Local and national governments too have not been relinquished of their responsibility to assist, but of course in some cases they might be perpetrators of atrocities concerned. And so the responsibility continues to the people. So of course, within a state, by this point, people are likely to be either fleeing from violence or taking up arms to intervene themselves to fight against persecution. But I'm not talking about those peoples, I'm talking about the peoples of all other states who maintain this responsibility to protect. Where those third states are failing to assist their neighbours, what more can people do? We've reached the top of this now, hourglass. So at this point, does the responsibility stop there? My argument is no, the responsibility continues, but it requires one more thing, that's a revolution. But this revolution isn't a revolution in the normal sense. It's not taking up arms or overthrowing states. It's a revolution from responsibility to accountability. People still have a responsibility to do what they can legally from the bottom up to continue the flow of responsibility by campaigning, by protesting, by lobbying. By the simple power of public pressure, people can make them try and try again. Because even after a failure, the responsibility still exists. And it's under these circumstances, when all levels have failed, it's up to the people to remind them of that. And that is our responsibility. It's our responsibility to hold them to account. It's our responsibility to vote. Thank you.
Okay, we now get the opportunity to grill Patrick on his responsibility to promote idea. I'm going to start and argue or ask you to deal with the contention that we don't have responsibility to protect whatsoever.
Yeah, so the responsibility to protect doesn't even mention peoples. It doesn't mention, it only applies to states. So my argument is, okay, at that stage it doesn't apply to states, but then through my thesis I've been going through this idea of residual responsibilities, where they come from in the first place, going through this stage of, okay, next in line, we've asked the Security Council to do this, that's their responsibility now. But I'm like, well, no, this responsibility still exists, even when members fail to act. So my idea or argument in this, which I might not even agree with myself, but is that this residual responsibility does exist in the peoples. For what reason and how? By the existence of states. What are states? States are made up of people. You know, they're a fictitious legal entity, but they're still made up of us. If we voted for a government that wanted to commit genocide, war crimes against humanity, even though legally, internally, we might be able to do that, the state itself wouldn't legally be able to do that. So there are actions that we've almost as a people lost the sovereignty to be able to do that through international law. So even though this isn't law, it's more of a moral argument for the law might be that we should have responsibility.
Okay, let's go. Keep it short, keep it sweet. He's on the soapbox, not you, Ben.
Why not responsibility to prevent revolution? If your rubbish happy protests don't work, surely your argument is that there isn't therefore a responsibility for a revolution.
Well, that's a really good question, because in some states, you know, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So in a state where there are certain circumstances where, say, the state is persecuting some populations, the legality of people uprising in self-determination and self-defense isn't contested by some states, especially those who support the overthrow of the state who's persecuting people. Should it be a responsibility to revolt? Well, no, because maybe that's revolt in the armed sense. Probably not, because then you're essentially advocating more armed violence and it's causing more problems than it's worth. So this is very, it's got so many caveats, it's not really an argument, but it's a responsibility to do whatever we can legally to revolt.
Joshua.
You're suggesting that you essentially failing to protect people who are being persecuted by the government, and then you're going to try and get them to revolt, aren't you just putting them in what's written? Are you just putting them in fire?
I don't agree with that question. No, because it's the responsibility on people from other states. So the responsibility of us as a state where our neighbours elsewhere might be going through these kind of atrocities. What can we do to ensure that our states continue with their responsibilities, so that they don't give up on talks, on peace talks, like the Security Council doesn't just enact, that the Security Council actually condemns certain things, because condemnation in international law or in international relations in and of itself is a powerful thing, and it still hasn't condemned certain atrocities in some states, and that's because of obviously political pressure. So the people of the states that are blocking certain action maybe have a responsibility to get their states to change their mind.
Luca.
So what's really controversial about this argument? Is there a rule under international law that prohibits people from voting in the
Again, that's a really good question, because the legality of a civil war is kind of subjective. Obviously, internally, the law will likely prohibit it, but in international law, there's no rule that prohibits. But there's actually a rule that prohibits intervention in a civil war, because they kind of just want both sides to sort their own problems out. So there isn't anything that prevents a revolution in international law, but it's likely illegal within the state itself.
Emily?
Taking humanitarian into consideration, why hold we can?
Yeah. Well, if we don't have responsibility, the responsibility stops, then, well, maybe we're just going to welcome human being where we care about people.
Legally, if the state has the responsibility to protect, it doesn't protect, and the state has to repair victims, has to redress victims. If we had the responsibility to revolt, we we don't reform, what happened to that?
Yeah, well, this idea of revolt is so that it continues, that keeps going, even when we fail as a people. The responsibility is still there, and it keeps going. The whole idea of this argument is to say that even when you fail, you've got that responsibility still there. So the people could probably never fail in its responsibility to protect if it had one, because there would always be little groups, little campaigns, NGOs that would be on that side of the argument, campaigning themselves. And if we ever were in a situation where no one is revolting against certain atrocities that are going on, then you wouldn't know what's going on with people.
One more. Yes, please. Last question.
And doesn't it assume that people are moral and they want to protect, but if they don't?
Yeah, it does assume that people, or at least some groups of people, are moral. It is a moral argument, and some people might disagree completely that we should or should not act in certain situations. But I think because the whole thing is based on such powerful atrocities as genocide, crimes against humanity, the international community, no state would say, oh, they're okay, that's fine. So that's kind of something that as human beings, we, I think, know is wrong. So in those situations, maybe, the moral argument comes into the basic fundamentals of human being.
I wonder what exceptions would look like.
Exceptions to the
I was washing my hair. I was busy that day.
Exceptions. Well, that's why I think the responsibility to protect as a doctrine should become more and more detailed, so that we know what it looks like to fail in the responsibility. Because right now we don't know what failure looks like in the responsibility. And a responsibility like this it's not law necessarily. It's more of a political thing. So exceptions, yeah, I don't know, because that's the conversation that should be had, and we should keep going.
Good. We will have a chance later to let Patrick know whether he has won us over or not. Next up is Max Byrne. Ben is going to set his clock for him. Max, like Patrick, has 5 minutes, 10 seconds, or baseball, tennis ball in the hand, baseball bat. And Max is going to argue, I think, that remote illegality drone strikes are always unlawful.
I want to be able to say it.
So, why are drone strikes always unlawful, Mr. Max Byrne? Let's go.
All right, it's there. Okay, so drones, and I promise this is probably the last mention of drones. We'll have a lot of it today. Drones are being used in Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, and Gaza by primarily the US, also the UK, and Israel. So there's two ways we can argue that they're illegal or unlawful within international law. The first is when we think about the resort of force, so considerations of use ad bellum. Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia have ostensibly consented to drone strikes carried in their country. However, contrary to some articles that have been written, I'm arguing presently that Yemen and Somalia do not have the capacity to consent to use of force. Under Article 20 of the draft Articles of State Responsibility, governments need to be legitimate and they need to be given by a requisite official. In Yemen and Somalia, neither government has sufficient control over its territory to consent to that kind of use of force. It lacks de facto control. In Somalia, the government has been effectively outside of Mogadishu, or outside of any part of the country beyond Mogadishu for the last few years, has barely any control at all. In Yemen, President Hadi has had to leave the country for a long period of time and has pretty much no control at all, and therefore can't consent. Okay. Pakistan withdrew their consent in 2013, so there's a period of time there in which it's illegal. So Yemen, they're all illegal under use ad bellum. Somalia, they're illegal, they all breach use ad bellum. And Pakistan after 2013. Although, of course, we can, in terms of use ad bellum, there's possible arguments of self-defense. The US would argue that an armed attack was carried out, and therefore they can resort to force under Article 51. Generally, that armed attack being 9/11. In Yemen and Somalia, AQAP, the Al-Qaeda group in Peninsula, or Al-Shabaab, are linked to the group that carried out the attacks in 9/11, so that can't be used as an armed attack. In Yemen, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, Al-Qaeda in Yemen as it was then, attacked. The only attack they've ever undertaken against the United States has been the attack on the USS Cole in the year 2000, which has been followed by 2 failed attacks. There's simply, you cannot argue that there's an armed attack there. It was 16 years ago, and drone strikes have been continued until this day. In Somalia, Al-Shabaab never attacked the US other than releasing a video calling on lone wolves to shoot US civilians, but that's not an armed attack in international law. So there's no, we can argue that under the use ad bellum, they're all illegal in those states. Okay. In other areas, it's slightly more difficult. Well, there's no way of arguing that they're illegal under the use ad bellum. So in Afghanistan, I think use ad bellum fine. Iraq, Syria, slightly more problematic maybe, but pretty much okay. Gaza, there's no question. I think that's all the states I mentioned. Just suffice it to say, the other states, there's not a use ad bellum concern. So we're thinking about international humanitarian law. And we're talking about drones as being inherently illegal and by virtue of being contrary to the principle of distinction, which the ICJ has recognised as a cardinal principle, part of customary law. Article 58 of AP1, which is customary law as well. Parties to a conflict must at all times distinguish between civilians and combatants. Article 57, which is also AP1, sorry, which is also customary law. States need to do everything feasible in their power to verify their targets of the military. Article 51 of AP1, attacks will be indiscriminate if collateral damage is excessive in relation to concrete and direct military advantage anticipated. And finally, Article 57(2)(a)(2) of AP1, it's imperative upon parties to minimise collateral damage through the choice of the means and methods of warfare. So we need to just quickly look at drones and their ability to adhere or not to any of those particular rules. Drones operated from thousands of miles away. They're obviously, we've got pretty impressive technology lately, but nonetheless, there's still latency between the actions of the pilot and the response of the drone. Okay, there's a period of time which means that drones are unable to actually act instantaneously on a situation as it's happening. And that period of latency, I think, is enough to contravene some of those rules of distinction under international law. Generally, they carry Hellfire missiles, which have a blast radius of between 15 and 20 meters, which is inherently contrary to the assertion of the US that they can kill one individual sitting between 2 others. I think the combination of this latency problem and the blast radius is enough to suggest that distinction is contravened. And again, the use of the camera from about 30,000 feet up gives you a very blurred picture, and lots of people play picture. Thank you very much. Practice that, yeah. I did wonder whether we'd get to 5 minutes. There was more really convincing stuff.
We will be the judges of that. Good job, Max. We have 10 minutes to grow Max. I guess I'll start and ask, well, do we have a responsibility to then go to the US airbases and revolt against these guys who are banning drones?
Yeah, I think perhaps some people are doing that. I think perhaps that's a perfect example of when the responsibility to a revolt comes into play. Thankfully, there have been groups doing it. I've got friends of mine who've been involved in protests at drone factories in the UK. So yeah, perhaps there is an imperative upon us. But I guess that's a personal thing for each and every one of you to decide when you leave today, whether you need to now go revolt under international law.
Let's go, let's grow. Joshua.
If that system stared from the drone camera and is part of the distinction, would you suggest a mandate right now?
No, probably not. I don't know. I mean, it's the combination, I think, of those 3 factors that I brought up. So that the difficulty, or the fairly pixelated image you get, the latency, and the blast radius. So there was an example, I think, from a couple of years ago, where a group of journalists were killed by a drone. Because if you look at the image through a camera, a telephoto lens at the end of a tripod looks almost indistinguishable from an RPG. And I think, so yeah, I mean, if a manned aircraft had made the same determination, then I think we could make the same argument about them. I'd probably like to, you know, yeah.
See now?
Yeah, so if, and based on what you mentioned, the United States is not able to justify their own attacks in Yemen and Somalia on the basis of consent because those governments have no capacity to give express consent to the United States. So the US on what basis can justify their own attacks occurring in Yemen and Somalia only on the basis of self-defense? I'm just wondering whether use that alone is applicable to the situation in Yemen and Somalia.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So Yemen and Somalia, the reason that I would argue it's illegal when I'm inside this little wooden bumper car or whatever it is, outside I would, yeah, I think consent's fine. It is an issue of use ad bellum because, so it's all about sovereignty. That's where, I think that's where consent comes from. Under Article 2.4 or under the UN Charter generally, the prohibition on the use of force, as well as, you know, peace being a generally good thing, it's about protecting sovereignty. And so I think it's the International Law Association classified use ad bellum as being permissible violations of sovereignty. Consent is an exercise in sovereignty. So as soon as we argue that consent is unavailable because of the lack of capacity of those governments, then absolutely it becomes an issue that has to be justified under use ad bellum. And because those the groups that are being targeted haven't undertaken an armed attack, then that's my argument that that's why they're illegal, because it breaches use ad bellum.
And based on what you have researched so far, could you find any opposing argument saying that, for example, the consent given by those governments are valid, for example? Have you found any scholars who said otherwise, saying that those consents expressed in terms of their own source are valid?
Yeah, I think an article came out pretty recently in the Journal of the Use of Force in International Law that argued exactly that. Yeah, you should all go and read it, cite it heavily. Yeah, so certainly there's a strong case to say that they can consent.
Luca?
Oh, it's actually seen now.
Oh, okay, let's go. Ben?
Verifiable evidence that is about to be a bomb in the university and everyone's going to be killed. Based it's being sent from intended time in the middle of the desert. Nothing big, it's 20 meters is very sheer with distinction or proportionality. A drone strike against that thing being humble.
Yeah, I think I can't quite remember exactly what my title was, but I don't necessarily want to give the impression that they'll always be illegal per se. Perhaps in that kind of hypothetical situation, then yes, we could say that's probably legal. It's a bit like the ICJ. I mean, basically, the ICJ talking about nuclear weapons. Like, yeah, then we can come up with instances that would say they're legal. Yeah.
Did everyone just notice Max hopping onto the slippery slope?
Yeah. Didn't take long.
Oh, there must be more.
Convinced. That's what a convinced. It's so huge. When did the audience get so big? Yeah, you're all positively convinced.
Sorry,
Go.
I was just wondering what responsibility do you think educational institutions bear in regards to research and creating hypotheses and frames? I remember having a conversation with a lecturer at this university, which was a little bit awkward to say the least. So you think educational institutions bear responsibility for creating
Do you mean responsibility in terms of they are responsible for what occurs, or they have an imperative to research such things?
I think in terms of they have a responsibility to keep that information shared.
Yeah, I think they do. Conciseness is the point. We've only got 10 minutes.
Any last? Yes, come from
Okay, well, if I understood your answer correctly to what Josh just asked you, the logical conclusion would be that because we can't ensure distinction at all times, even if we send a private plane, right, then private plane will be illegal too. Isn't it actually the use that makes it illegal and not the one itself?
Well, yeah.
It's the one that makes it.
Yeah, so there's this issue, isn't there, in IHL, we're allowed, when we talk about distinction, we're looking at either the means or the mode of use of force. So I guess I don't know enough about manned aircraft to say that they would per se be illegal. And obviously, in response to Ben's question, I kind of went back on the idea that drones are inherently illegal. So it's kind of a combination. It's a mode and means answer, I guess. I think that the way they have been used is certainly contrary to IHL. I mean, I only needed to argue that they're illegal in some way. So it might be that in Yemen and Somalia, they're all perfectly legal in terms of IHL, but not Isabella. Not that I'm saying that. So it's that they are, as a mode, they're pretty much unable to adhere to distinction. And then the way they've been used, sitting on top of that means that if we combine the two, they're definitely unable to adhere to the principle of distinction.
Okay, have you watched Eye in the Sky?
Yeah, I wrote a blog post.
Oh, did you?
It's
Okay.
pretty good. Yeah, you should watch it. You know, well, why am I selling it? It's quite good.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, our third and final soapboxer is Andrew Woodhouse from the University of Liverpool. Andrew is going to have a rant about something over which we may have some control. In fact, unlike perhaps drone strikes, we have the 23rd of June, exercise your right, your forefathers died for, etc., etc. Andrew is going to argue EU referendum, vote leave, get Boris. On your marks. Go.
All right, thanks to the organisers for inviting me. I'm kind of sticking out like a sore thumb here because I do not do international law at all. I've been asked by Ben to do something on the referendum because it's so current. So don't expect any international law, don't expect any law at all. In fact, this is going to be an entirely political discussion because the referendum's coming up. So, as you said, the referendum is coming up. So usually I do a soapbox about something a bit more controversial and legal, but just going to put forward my case for Remain. And my case is pitched at the academic community, which I believe to be quite a centrist community or maybe a left-leaning community. So that's what I'm looking for, and I'm strongly arguing for a vote to Remain rather than a vote to leave, or even a vote to abstain, which I know some people who are enthusiastic about the EU are going for. And the reason for this is I think Brexit would be a nightmare for the centrist and left-leaning political persuasion, because ultimately it would be the most right-wing exit imaginable. That's what it's been described as by some. And there are two reasons that I'd like to outline for you that this will be the case. So the first, my title is Vote Leave, Get Boris, which should scare you. But also expand this now to Vote Leave, Get Boris, and Nigel. So you don't need to be scared of. And there's two sides to this argument. The first is the Farage. Okay, so I don't need to warn you about the dangers of Nigel Farage. I'm sure you're all well aware. But we have to look at the fact by far the biggest issue of this referendum, the biggest debate, has been about immigration. Okay, and I fear that this debate has really legitimised an anti-immigration agenda. And to vote for Remain would be to legitimise that anti-immigration agenda. Okay, so if we were to win, there would be this sort of victory for this anti-immigration agenda. But I really can't see that much would change if there was a Brexit. We still need a lot of immigration in this country. There would still be a lot of immigration in this country. And those people who voted leave to lower immigration would probably be disappointed and would perhaps turn to more anti-immigration parties. So what I'm trying to say essentially is that a post-Brexit world would be a world in which Nigel Farage would play a big part, and I'd be very concerned about that in the election that may follow. So that's the Farage argument that comes up there. The second one is the Boris, slightly more legal perhaps, this argument. So studying EU law, it's very clear that the UK legal system is massively intertwined with the European legal system. You cannot separate them. You have to separate those things. They're so interlocked, and a lot would have to change in a very short period of time. Now, because it has to change so much in a short period of time, this won't really be able to be done in a democratic parliamentary manner. This is going to have to be done quite executively, led by civil servants in a national government. And it's very clear that if Brexit were to win, they will have won because of Boris, and he will be elected the next Conservative leader and next Prime Minister of this government. And I would be extremely worried about a large change to the legal system led by Boris Johnson. Now, I appreciate he's a very likeable chap to some people quite like him, but I would be extremely worried about his political persuasion. What strikes me most about Boris that I remember is an article he wrote for The Telegraph, in which he said, "We should be humbly thanking the super rich, not bashing them." So he's clearly a very free marketeer, kind of super rich kind of guy. I don't think the Britain that would emerge from a Boris Johnson government would be very good for the centrist and left-wing voter, and that is where my appeal is going. So those are my two reasons to vote Remain. Obviously, there's a million other arguments, and if you've got any questions, I could probably take them on. So thank you very much for listening. Cheers.
Wow, with a minute to go, impressive. Okay, I have an immediate question, which is linking back to Patrick's soapbox again. Okay, we have two options: vote Leave, get Boris, or Remain, and more of the same. Why not vote Leave, get Boris, and then we can inaugurate a revolution against the status quo, this neoliberal European Union constitution of Europe?
I mean, I think there's an argument to be made about overhauling the European Union, and I think it could certainly be done from a left-wing perspective, and I would absolutely advocate that in the future if possible. But I think this is the very point. We should all be very aware that the Conservatives are currently doubling down on their control of the country. They're changing the electoral borders. They're doing all sorts of constitutional things which will ensure a lot of Conservative power for many, many years to come. So I think there is very little chance of a left-wing government being in Britain for a long time, and I think it would be a real problem. It would be very Conservative led for the next period of time. That would be a very problematic period of time.
Okay, let's go. I'll keep going. Max?
It's quite difficult to want to really on this, because of course I agree, so I'm the devil's advocate here. All right, well, what about the fact that a Brexit would remove us from the kind of the lingering danger of the further neoliberalisation through agreements like TTIP and large free trade global agreements like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly a left-wing case to be made against the EU. I think there's a lot of issues with it, like the corporatisation that's coming with TTIP and that sort of thing. But I just think those arguments are much better made inside the EU. And again, leaving the EU and going with Boris, he's very free trade. You can't make an argument, let's go left free trade and then get Boris in.
Yes.
I hope you're not actually voting on party personality politics. What, particularly with Nigel Farage, what policies or ideas do you test? You kind of painted him out as this antagonist. That's the case for me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That can be seen as very superficial. You know, these two are the villains. Let's vote against the villains. But I think the policies that they assume in a very deep level, you know, I think I fundamentally disagree with. I think the centrist and left-wing voter should fundamentally specifically. So I think Nigel Farage is fundamentally isolationist. He's fundamentally anti-immigration. And I think any government in which national priority program would have a lot of xenophobic sort of undertones, so I have a major issue with that. And Boris Johnson, as I've said, I think is very much a right-leaning person to the right of David Cameron. I think the centrist and the should remain away. Detailed policy, I'm not sure, but I do not trust his political instincts.
So do you believe in a discriminatory immigration system?
Do I believe in a discriminatory immigration system? And is that what you believe is in place at the moment?
Me, no, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, I mean, I think. So what's the question with discriminatory immigration?
So non-EU nationals are treated differently to EU nationals. Do you believe in that? Because you said you don't agree with Nigel Farage's immigration policy. He's advocating fair immigration policy that treats all people equally, and that is, he's not saying no immigration, he's just saying controlled immigration, and people have a serious concern with mass immigration.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't argue against, people are very reasonably concerned about immigration. I'm not saying there doesn't need to be any control on immigration whatsoever. My first response to that would be that non-EU immigration is already higher than EU immigration in this country. I think that's been lost in a lot of debate. There's actually a lot more non-EU immigration that's already taken place, so that is already there. And then I think the fact that we favour EU immigrants or non-EU immigrants is just a part of our membership of the internal market and our membership of the European Union, which I also support in a general sense. So I think that sort of comes with the territory of the internal market.
We don't get a chance to have a referendum very often, and there's a great opportunity to have some similar debates on the whole of the EU, and that hasn't happened because it's just been polarised by sort of immigration and stuff. You've accepted that you're simply contributing to this, and as an EU lawyer, you not feel like you have responsibility.
I fully agree with you, and I in fact would like to place the blame on Ben Murphy for inviting me to a soapbox on this issue rather than a genuine policy debate. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I'm trying to be controversial. I'm trying to stoke things up. I believe in a genuine policy argument that gets out the facts, that gets out the figures. I think the EU, the Remain side, wins very comfortably. But yeah, as you say, 5 minutes, throw out some controversial things. Well, I'm sure I could have shown you many graphs and stuff, and you would have been half asleep by the end. So.
I have a question. Because you said that this period of time of change, if we're leaving the EU, would be not enough long. But it's actually, it was told recently by Donald Tusk, who is the president of the European Council, I think, that it will take at least 7 years to get through this process. Do you think that 7 years is not enough? I go with, for example, the Slovakia, which changed the currency system in a matter of 2 years. Well, the problem is that they rejected this idea, but it's 3 times more over the 3 times more period of time.
Yeah, I think the 7 years that was mentioned by Donald Tusk is in relation to how we interact in the future with Europe. It's going to be an incredibly complicated process and will involve a lot of negotiations. So I think that is I think that's enough time. I think it'll be very difficult negotiation, but I think that will happen. My point really is in relation to what happens within Britain. So it's less to do with our relationship with Europe and how we now, instead it's how we now deal with our policies without the influence of the European Union. So every single domestic area of law will have to change vastly. And that's what I fear that that task will go to our next government. And I don't think I'm going to like that. So I think that's the issue, the change of domestic policy rather than change of our relationship with Europe.
If we leave and get Boris, we could check out 5 years. If we stay, and then the country's given the Tory Cameron Osborne government majority, we'll have to get Osborne after 5 years. With it through, maybe we might want to take exactly regarding human rights. So I just want my opinion on that.
Yeah, you're right. It's, whatever happens, it's an absolute apocalypse. You know? Yeah, I think I would slightly favour Cameron, maybe Osborne over Johnson, but I think it's that point about the power of the government. So a British government in the EU is, funnily enough, less powerful than a British government out of the EU in terms of domestic policy. And I fear what that domestic policy will become under Boris, whereas it will be regulated by the saviour, the EU, for the next few years.
In 1975, it was quite a commonly held academic view that we were voting out of fear of being left behind rather than enthusiasm of being in. And about flipping that on its head in 2016, would you not argue it's now kind of a vote of fear of, or more enthusiasm, but it's a vote of fear of being left out rather than enthusiasm of being in still? So would you not say that's kind of like your founding debate vote on fear rather than enthusiasm? Which is essentially what you said with Boris Johnson about the fear.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's a shame, and it's one of the most difficult things for a vote for Remain is that you can't go, the EU is brilliant, it's fantastic, let's all vote for Remain, isn't it great? Because virtually everyone who's on the Remain side goes, well, it's not great, but you know, it's better than the alternative. And I think that is just the state of affairs. It's a shame we can't be more enthusiastic. It's a shame that we have to attenuate our like for the EU so much, but I just think it's simply the far better option than a leave. I think, you know, there's a lot of fear peddling and that sort of thing, but I think there would be a lot of negative consequences if we were to leave the EU. And it's a shame that it can't be more enthusiastic, but I think that's just the way it is, unfortunately. You know, it's better than the alternative.
I have also another question. Because staying in the EU, would mean to unify more with Europe. Then, as Max said, actually, then there would be TTIP treatment. Well, isn't that a kind of threat also for the sovereignty? Because we'll have less and less decision, and democracy is also under threat.
Yeah, I think that's a valid question. I mean, I think Europe is likely to move forward with integration in terms of the Eurozone. I think there will be some further developments in that, but we won't be. There's no way I can see the UK will further integrated in the EU. I think we will retain our position, which is kind of out of the Euro, out of the Schengen free movement area. So I think the defederalisation of Europe is not something to be feared from our perspective. And further, part of the renegotiation package that David Cameron organised was that it's impossible for the states that are members of the Euros to outvote states that aren't members of the Euros on those issues. So another reason not to fear that is that they cannot then sort of become a power that completely neutralises our power. There are checks in place to stop us being left behind in that sense.
What if that's not quite in the future? There was someone like Boris or Farrell in the EU, pro-EU but head of an EU commission or something like that. So pro-EU but right-wing.
I mean, I think the EU is already quite right-wing anyway. You know, it's hardly like a bastion of left-wing politics. But I think it's I don't know. That's very hypothetical, and I've got to say that. I'm sorry.
Okay, we're between revolution and democracy. Here, a democracy which is a choice between two bad choices, as far as I can tell. Wonderful. Thanks, Andrew. That's our soapbox. I just realised the last time we had soapbox, we voted at the end as to whether or not we were convinced. In your case, Andy, it's a bit controversial. I'm not sure how many people want to declare where they're going to vote in Brexit. So I can ask if you keep your hand down. I'll take it as you don't want to expose yourself at this point. But let's nobody exposes yourself. Not that kind of conference. We're going to start with Patrick. So, did Patrick convince us that we have a responsibility to revolt? Hands up if you are convinced that we have a responsibility to revolt. Anyone want to tell us why we're not convinced? Shout out, give them abuse.
I wasn't here from the beginning, so I.
Fair enough, fair enough. I think our responsibility to revolt is pretty inherent, don't know? Maybe. Okay, are we convinced that that drones are always unlawful? Hands up. Not too bad. Anyone want to say why they're not? Just to give the other side an argument.
Well, kind of the comparison to fire plane kind of kills it. Because in that sense, it really is just a weapon. And then, you would have to call others and then we would have to defeat the purpose.
Let's do that.
Yeah, it's just not that's what kind of solutions to avoid.
What's Max's
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're on the slippery slope. Okay, Andy Woodhouse. vote. Are we convinced that if we vote leave, we get Boris? This is a bad thing. Oh, fairly anonymous there. Ish. Anyone want to shout out why we're not convinced by this? And again, don't feel free. Do feel free. It's a democracy kind of. No, that's the sensitive issue. Good. I think you've all done super well. Under serious pressure. Thank you. This is not an easy thing to do, so I think we should all. Is it now my responsibility to wrap this up? How many people are hungover after the one bottle of wine each and eager to get out of here? I'm not hungover, but I have spent the last 2 days in France of football, and my mind is fractured between what happened with Slovakia game. They went 2-0. Anyone know? I think they did. Anyway, football is on my mind, so let's try and get out of here nice and quickly. I did have a couple of things to say, and this conference, I missed yesterday, unfortunately. I was following it on Twitter. I followed part of the discussion on YouTube, mainly to freak Rob out by sending him little messages to say that he was wrong in his comments. Unfortunately, he knew that it was being recorded, so he won that one. The discussion was super interesting. I think we've sort of looked at normative issues, but also tried to dig deep, dig a little bit deeper, and look at prices from a more rounded perspective. One thing that I would really encourage you to do, I don't know if it came up during the conference at all, but has anyone really examined the etymology of the word crisis? Did we talk about the origins of does anyone know? It's Greek, of course. But it's worth having a look at the origins of the concept of crisis, because I think it tells us to take a step back and think about crisis as, first of all, opportunistic. An opportunity for us. It also reminds us that crisis isn't always necessarily a bad thing. It can lead to a change in circumstances in one way or another. The term crisis from the Greek was used by Hippocrates to describe illness and disease and malaise, and the crisis point was when a change was coming in the status of that illness and disease. The crisis point. It may be familiar to you from sort of, I don't know, old-fashioned TV shows or whatever, when a patient reaches crisis point, and it's up to the patient whether or not they can sort of get themselves better at this point. So in that sense, it can be revival, it can lead to death of something. So it doesn't necessarily, I think Christine and Rob did a very good job during the discussion yesterday of sort of pointing out that crisis is often used opportunistically, and so did Greg Messenger in relation to international economic law. But I think we should also think about the way in which we use it. So let's not follow the state and buy into the idea that the crisis is always necessarily a problem, or that there is in fact a crisis. So drawing on Walter Benjamin, who argued that we're in a constant state of crisis. The state of emergency is in fact the rule, and it is up to us, in the tradition of the oppressed, to cause a real state of emergency. So revolt, perhaps, in order to change the nature of the crisis or the state of the emergency, So on that note, I would just really encourage you to go and have a look at how the word has been used through the ages, because it has links to things like the decision maker, but that doesn't necessarily mean government or state. It can mean us watching a crisis unfold and how it is being used. The word is also, the word critique is also linked to the word crisis. They have the same etymology. So it's our job, I think, to interpret where we fit in crisis using critical reasoning. So examining what states are doing, examining how international law is being wielded, and not taking the state at its word, or international lawyers at their word necessarily. So that's crisis. I think it's always a useful theme. When Ben and Patrick started organizing this conference, I think you were a little bit ambivalent about using international law and human rights in crisis, because crisis is so pervasively used, whether in policy or in politics or in law. But it is a useful conceptual tool, I think, especially when we identify that link to critique. On the conference, I would really just like to express how impressed I am with Ben and Patrick for organizing this event. It has been super. The papers that I heard today were, without exception, excellent, really engaged papers, really good discussion. I think you've brought a really interesting bunch of people together. I'm particularly impressed at the gender makeup of all the panels and so on. You've done a really excellent job. It's all been tweeted online and so on. And one of the things I'd really like to say by way of closing remarks on this is I did my PhD at the Irish Centre for Human Rights in Galway. I'm now a lecturer here. Where I did my PhD, it was a superb PhD culture, research culture. PhD students were organised events, got really involved in the life of the law school. That's replicated here, and it's thanks to people like Patrick, Ben, Andy, Vaughan, whoever else is in the room, whose names I'm Katie, and all of our PhD students. It's super important that PhD students take the lead in law departments or whatever department you're in on organising events and on creating our research culture. Because as you all know, once you start lecturing, you're too busy answering student emails and telling people how much impact you're doing on a daily basis, or being studied by ref committees to create a research culture. So we really do rely on our PhD students at Liverpool. The International Law and Human Rights Unit just would not function if it wasn't for these guys in particular. So a massive thank you for a really great conference and for your general help with keeping our research culture flowing along. And on that note, if any of you have gotten the sense that you really like Liverpool, it's a great place to work. We have 2 lectureships currently advertised. We constantly seem to be advertising lectureships, so keep an eye on jobs.ac.uk. There are many of you here that I expect will enjoy working here and also have a good chance of working here. So thank you all, and let's give a round of applause to Patrick again. Do you have something? Or is that it? You drank all the wine last night. Sorry.
James.